Good morning, all. My name is Ebony Stocks, and I am the Executive Vice President of the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation. On behalf of our President and CEO, David Iannucci, it is an honor for me to welcome you to a great day of information and support. We are delighted to welcome Rod Johnson with the U.S. Small Business Administration to give us an update and an overview of the Paycheck Protection Program, something that I hope that you all have taken advantage of. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Economic Development Corporation, our overall mission is to take doing business in Prince George's County to a whole new level. We help our businesses get connected to top talent and other resources like SCORE and the SBA for the optimal success. We help entrepreneurs plan and launch successful businesses. And in this COVID-19 environment, we have been a one-stop shop for local business resources to help you keep your doors open and navigate through this quarantine period. One of the programs that the county has initiated, the COVID-19 Business Recovery Initiative, will be putting more than $20 million in grants to small businesses in Prince George's County, which I hope that some of you have applied for and are now recipients of. Today, I want you to consider our team of business development managers, your team as well. Consider Alicia Moran, our small business manager, your personal guide to small business success. There will be a lot of good information provided today and a lot to think about. Reach out to us, to Rod. We also have Matt here with us today from SCORE through our contact information that we'll share at the end of the presentation. Thank you all for joining us today, and best of luck to all of you. At this time, I want to introduce you to Alicia Moran, the EDC Small Business Manager, who will introduce you to our panelists and get started today. Alicia.
Thank you, Ebony. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all to all the small business owners that have joined us here today. And we really want to thank you. We want to thank you for operating your business. We want to thank you for all you've done to keep your employees employed. We want to thank you for all the information you've been sharing with your 1099 workers. We want to thank you for reopening safely if you are reopening, and if you're ready to reopen and you're working to adjust and pivot and kind of put things in place to reopen safely when you're able to. Again, we want to thank you for that. We want to thank you for taking on some new e-commerce tools, for maybe doing some new and different things to help make sure your business actually survives and hopefully thrives at a certain point in time here. So we know it's been a struggle. We know that everybody is working diligently, and this team of experts here, we're all working diligently to help you and to support you as well. So I just wanted to start by thanking you for that. And then I wanted to say we're all in this together. So consider us your partners and just know that we are here to help you. On the next slide, you're going to see a couple bits of information on resources that are available to you. The county has issued a reopening website, and on the next slide, you will see that. In addition, you will also see information on there you go. You'll be seeing information on our COVID-19 updates, and you'll also be seeing the Buy Prince George's campaign. If you have an e-commerce portal and you can do e-commerce business, please register with the Buy Prince George's campaign website. Again, if you're looking for information and updates on COVID-19 resources and other information, check out our COVID-19 page. And for reopening information, check out the reopening page. I would again just also notify you that the state of Maryland also has reopening information. If you need that, we can connect you to that as well, because I know many of you may be operating in multiple jurisdictions in multiple states. So without further ado, I will tell you that the protocols, you all are on mute, but you have the ability to ask questions or to pose information in the chat box. So please do ask questions or put information in the chat, and both Rod, Matt, Ebony, and I will all be working to make sure that we are getting to your questions. As part of the economic development team over the last several weeks, we have seen a lot of questions from the business community about how the EIDL program and the PPP program interface. We also know that programs like the EIDL program were opened and then closed, and now they've reopened to businesses. So we wanted to notify our local businesses of this new opportunity if you missed it to start. And we also wanted to make sure that you knew that the deadline to apply to the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, is upcoming. So we wanted to get this information out there to everybody and make sure that our business community in Prince George's County was informed and able to get answers from the experts. So we brought two experts here today. We have Rod Johnson from the Small Business Administration, who's been our partner, and he is a lender relations specialist. Some of you met him through our Pathways program, and we're pleased to partner with Rod and the Small Business Administration and our regional office here in this district area. We also have joining us Matt Evans, and Matt Evans is a SCORE counselor and a CPA extraordinaire. Both Rod and Matt have really been offering tremendous service to our clients, to our customers, and we just are very pleased that our partners from both the SBA and SCORE are here to help with this joint presentation for everybody here in the community. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rod Johnson. Thank you, Rod.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's a great day. It's 80 degrees outside, but most importantly, money is flowing through the streets of the United States to help sustain and grow your businesses. Again, my name is Rod Johnson. I'm a lender relations specialist with the Small Business Administration, and my primary role is to burst open the vault doors of all the banks and credit unions and CDFIs to make sure that money is getting into your hands to sustain and grow your businesses. Next slide, please. Now, there are going to be two things that we cover primarily. The first thing we're going to cover really is how to grow your business. What SBA programs can you use to grow your businesses? Because believe it or not, there are companies doing COVID-19 that are actually expanding. So I'm going to talk about that first. And then the rest of the program is going to be centered around the CARES Act. And underneath the CARES Act, right, we're going to talk about the famous PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. We're going to talk about EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and the advance that comes along with it. We're going to talk about the SBA Express bridge loans that you can get. And then we're going to talk about the debt relief program, which is a well-kept secret. Not many people have heard about the debt relief program that can help sustain your businesses. So next slide, we're going to jump right into SBA-backed products that can help your business expand. So there are various SBA-backed programs that are out there to help expand your business. The first one is the SBA Signature Program, which is the 7A loan program. And with that, you can have a line of credit or a term loan, and you can do real estate loans, and real estate loans including construction and permanent financing. Then you have the SBA Express. It goes up to $350,000, and the bank is offered a 50% guarantee. Let me jump back a minute with the 7A loans. The bank is actually getting an 80% guarantee for that loan. You have the SBA Veterans Advantage Program, which is similar to the SBA Express. It goes up to $350,000. For you government contractors and construction contractors out there, we have the CAP line program that actually goes up to $5 million. And of course, the bank gets an 80% guarantee for doing that loan. Then you have the Community Advantage loan. Those are typically offered in low to moderate income areas. The loans go up to $250,000, and typically you can apply for those at your certified development financial institutions. Then you have the international trade, and I'm going to lump these together, the international trade, export working capital program, and the export express program. They actually assist you with being able to ship goods overseas and offer the bank a guarantee anywhere from 50 to 90%, depending on which program that you use. And then, of course, the second famous loan is the 504 loan that most people use, again, for real estate and to purchase equipment. In this case, the bank is taking on 50% of the risk. The CDFI or the SBA agent is taking on 40%, and then you as the borrower are actually putting down 10% of the total cost of the deal. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about how do you get access to those loan programs. Well, the very first thing you do is that you have to go to a qualified SBA lender, and at SBA.gov, you can actually find who those lenders are that are participating in the SBA program. All right, so this is what happens. The lender actually approves the loan. If they're not a preferred lender, then the lender actually approves the loan subject to the SBA guarantee. Then the lender submits the request to us, the SBA. The SBA approves the lender request, and then the lender settles and services the loan. Now, that's if the bank is not a preferred lender. If the bank is a preferred lender, then actually the bank will actually approve the deal on their own documentation. The SBA will send back a guarantee number, and then you go straight to closing. So it's a pretty simple process. If you're working with an SBA preferred lender, it typically takes about 45 days to close the loan, anywhere from 40, let me back up. It's typically 30 to 60 days, depending on what type of loan that you're receiving, whether that's a working capital loan or a real estate loan. Next slide, please. All right, so what is it that you need to take to your lender to get an SBA-backed loan? You must have a business plan, and the business plan doesn't need to be a 50-page business plan. Really, the business plan, including your cash flow statements, balance sheet, and income statement, should really not be over about 15 pages. 15 pages, 20 pages max, not the 50-page business plan. Matt Evans and I have seen these 50-page business plans, and they put you to sleep. So try to keep it at a maximum of 20 pages. We need the resumes of the key management team members. We need, I just mentioned the business financials, the balance sheet, income statement, cash flows, equity statement. If you've already been in business, then of course we want to see now 2017, 18, and 19 business tax returns. And since we're in the month of June, interim financial statements year to date to May 31st, 2020. Also, if you're doing over $2 million in revenues, we want to see reviewed quality financial statements from your CPA. And if you're doing 10 million or more in revenues, we want to see audited financial statements from your CPA. Now, we want to see our sources and uses of cash. Here, they're calling it the use of proceeds. So we need to be able to see what you're using the money for. So for example, if it's a real estate purchase, then we need to see that, that real estate purchase is $1 million. And if you're using one of the SBA programs, then you're putting in your 10%. So we need to see a chart that shows the sources and uses of cash. Cash flow projections, month by month. Matt Evans can give you a cash flow projections Excel template to assist you with your cash flow projections. Typically, we like to see 3 years of cash flow projections. Then the legal documents, your articles, bylaws, certificate of good standing, your operating agreement. Okay, those are the legal documents that we're talking about that we like to see. Then your personal financial statement. And since we're in the month of June, then we should be receiving a personal financial statement dated 5/31/2020. And then the personal tax returns for 2017, 18, and yes, 2019. And then if you're a startup, then we want to see at least 10 to around 20% of the total project cost. So these are the items that you need to take to your lender for them to review to get that approval for that loan. Next slide, please. All right, Borrower requirements. All right, so we've already talked about a good business plan. All right, good character. And you say, well, how in the world are you judging good character? Your credit report, okay? The credit report is an indication, right? Not a be all end all, but an indication of your character. For SBA purposes, the FICO score should not be any lower than 650. As you know, outside of the SBA, most banks like to see a FICO score of 700 or above. All right, management expertise. We like to see management expertise in whatever it is you're doing. So for example, you can't have Rod Johnson, who's been, a finance guy all of his career, all of a sudden rolling out of bed saying that he wants to run a Starbucks coffee shop, right? That's just not what I've done. All right, so you would be kind of suspect if I came to you and said that I wanted to now, run a coffee shop, okay? Knowing that all my experience has been in accounting and finance. All right, we want to see a commitment to succeed, okay? Adequate working capital, the ability to repay, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, okay? Banks are not into making collateral loans. It's cash flow. Cash flow and character, repay your loans. And then you're a citizen or a legal resident of the United States. Next slide, please. And yes, I like that stamp, loan approved.
Rod, we seem to have lost you.
Yeah, it looks like he might have, his connection may have frozen up.
So let's see if we can get him back. Matt, while we're waiting, one of the questions that came in was the 60-40 split on the Paycheck protection program.
Yeah, so you have to use at least 60% of the money.
Okay, I'm
There you
back.
go. Thank you.
All right.
Hello, Rod.
Sorry, you lost me for a minute. Okay. All
right,
right,
cool.
sorry about that.
Keep
All
going.
right. So for-profit small businesses, as determined by the SBA size standards, okay? Now, I'm gonna pause here for a minute because a lot of times people think of small companies as single member LLCs, sole proprietors, or 1099 miscellaneous. Well, for the PPP program, which we'll talk about a little later, when organizations like Ruth Chris and some of the others were getting these PPP loans and they were saying, well, they're not small businesses. But you know what? Under the SBA size standards, based on their NAICS code, they are actually a small business. So I just want to draw your attention to that because small businesses can be 20 million or 30 million or 40 million in revenue that you may not consider or larger, but it all depends on what their NAICS code is. So just keep that in mind, okay? We want to know what your personal contribution of equity is into the program, and then legal businesses and SBA backed industry programs are also important. Now, here's something that's key. You cannot have defaulted on a government-backed loan, okay? It just can't. So that just shuts the door immediately. You can't have any outstanding judgments or liens or open bankruptcies. I don't know how many times when I've taken in an application and the person has said that they are not in open bankruptcy, and then I go to LexisNexis because I find out a whole lot of things under LexisNexis, right? And find out that the individual is in an open bankruptcy. So you can't have any open bankruptcies, okay? Again, no previous loss to the government. Student loans or former SBA loans that are with the Department of Treasury. You cannot have defaulted on a government loan, and you cannot be delinquent on child support. Next slide, please. All right, activities not eligible for SBA loans. Investment properties, right? So I get that all the time. The 4-unit apartment building. So no, investment properties, apartment buildings are not eligible. Financial institutions, pyramid sales like the multi-level marketing schemes like Amway, and some of the other ones that are out there. All right, of course not adult education. Gambling. Now, you know what, during this whole PPP process, I've actually spoken with 20 individuals who actually gamble for a living. They file a 1040 with a Schedule C, but no, they're not eligible for SBA loans, okay, for you gamblers out there. So no, you're not eligible. And really, to be a little more specific, if 1/3 of your income is derived from gaming activities, and I think that's what the SOP says, you are not eligible for SBA loans. Normally, nonprofits are not eligible for SBA loans, but the exception has been made for the PPP program. Activities that discriminate or restrict patronage, okay? So some of the country clubs around the country who restrict patronage are not eligible for SBA loans, and then transportation vehicles for personal use. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to talk about what I call the debt relief and deferrals. So, existing SBA loans. If you have a 7A, 504, or microloan, you go to your bank and you tell them that you want up to 6 months of deferment of principal and interest on your SBA loan. But you have to do that through your current lender. If you have an existing disaster assistance loan, okay, you can actually call the Office of Disaster Assistance, and I'll give you the number toward the end of the presentation, where you can call them and actually have them defer payments through December 31st, okay? Now, on your non-SBA loans, lines of credit, term loans, commercial mortgages, then you can actually, again, approach your banker and say you'd like to have your payments deferred up to 6 months. But of course, it's up to each lending each lending institution to decide if it'll be a 3-month deferment or 6 months. But of course, you're going to push for that 6-month deferment. Next slide, please. Now, here is why these banks are going to do that. And that's because the OCC and the FDIC and all the regulatory agencies for banks and credit unions were sent a letter to say, if your borrower approaches you and they want a deferment on their loans, then we are strongly recommending that you do just that. And so if you get a hard time from your respective lender, then just remind them that their regulators have okayed the fact that they can defer your loan up to 6 months. And here's the other thing. Getting a deferment, it will not impact on your personal credit score, okay, which is important. And the other thing is it doesn't impact the lender's standing with the bank regulators, because normally when a loan is deferred for actually 90 days, then it's moved into another category called the bad loan category. But since you're going to be asking for up to 6 months, the regulatory agencies recognize this, and so the banks won't be penalized for putting your loan on a 6-month deferment. All right, next slide, please.
Rod, they have till September 27th, right, to do the debt relief. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for that, Matt. Yes. All right, so now the famous PPP program under the CARES Act. All right, so we're going to go over the first part of it, and then we'll get into the Flexibility Act and what's going on with that. Okay, So these are not direct loans from the SBA. You go to your respective bank, credit union, or fintech. Fintech, meaning On Deck, PayPal, Cabbage, and the like, okay? That's where you go and apply for the PPP loans. Lenders do not charge a fee for these loans. The SBA is providing 100% loan guarantee to the lenders. They're telling me, all right, as of June 15th, more than 100 billion in PP funding is still available. And actually, as of today, that is actually absolutely correct. There's $100 billion left. The deadline to apply is June 30th. I would not recommend that you wait until June 30th to go apply for PPP, because most likely you're not going to get approval, because it's going to be hard for the bank to actually process your application and then get an SBA approval number to approve and fund you, okay? So right after this presentation, you need to run out to your bank and get some of that $100 billion, okay, to help sustain your business. Next slide, please. All right, so who's eligible? So you have religious organizations, veteran organizations, tribal concerns. Now this one's a little tricky. It says concerns that have 500 or fewer employees or are within SBA size standards. And if you want to know if your business fits within the SBA size standards, it's sba.gov/size, okay? And remember, you can still be a small business and have 1,500 employees. So it's important that you understand what your primary NAICS code is to make sure that you're eligible. Self-employed individuals are also eligible, okay? And accommodations and food services concerns, starting with a NAICS code of 72, with more than one physical site are eligible if no more than 500 workers are employed per location. And this is where the Ruth Chris situation came in and the Shake Shacks of the world came in, right? Because they didn't have more than 500 workers employed at one location, right? Because they had multiple locations and you may have 20 people in each location. So that's how, and again, because of the NAICS code, which starts with a 72, right? If you look at the SBA.gov size standards, that's why they were considered a small business. All right, so we know that the loan amount is up to 10 million, reflecting 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost. The interest rate is out of this world, 1%, okay? 1%. In my lifetime, and I'm an old guy, I haven't seen an 1% interest rate ever in my life. So the interest rate is great. No loan fees for this, okay? The collateral. Here's another thing. I was a lender for 32 years. I've never seen a loan underwritten with no collateral and no personal guarantees. I'll say it again. No collateral, no personal guarantees, an interest rate of 1%, and no loan fees. Unheard of. All right. The use of the funds, primarily for payroll, cost and benefits. Other allowed expenses include mortgage interest, rent, utilities, business phone, the internet, okay? All of those are uses for the funds. Now, 60% of the PPP money, now that was passed on June 5th, by President Trump, says that 60% of the money can be used. Thank you. No, you can go ahead. 60%, next slide, go ahead. 60% of the money can be used for payroll instead of under the initial PPP that rolled out on March 27th and had an interim financial ruling on April 2nd that said 75%. Now it's 60%, okay, under the Flexibility Act. And so most of your money must be used for that. And instead of an 8-week period where you had to bring your people back, have them on payroll, use up all the money, and then you ask for forgiveness, right? Now you have a 24-week period from the day of disbursement up through, I guess it's December 31st. All right. Partial forgiveness will be granted if 60% spent or more is spent on payroll costs beyond the covered period. Okay, we know that. All right, next slide, please. So remember, 40% can be used for those other expenses that I just named. All right, so the EIDL. If you recall, the EIDL portal that you apply for at the SBA was down for about 3.5 weeks. Now it's up and the money's flowing again, okay? So small businesses, nonprofits of any size, including religious organizations, veteran organizations, tribal concerns, self-employed individuals are all eligible. And remember, the SBA size standards apply. The loan amount now is up to $150,000. If you remember, back in the 3rd week of March when the program was rolled out, the loan amount was up to $2 million. Well, let me share with you, we had 5.8 million applications from across the country for this program. And we had limited human resources trying to process 5.8 million applications. Then we wanted to make sure that everybody that applied received some funds. So we had to lower the loan amount from $2 million to $150,000, okay? Reflecting 2 months of average monthly gross profits. The interest rate, 2.75 for nonprofits, 3.75 for for-profit organizations. Now, you can also use these auto funds for payroll. You can use them for accounts payables. You can use them for rent lease payments, interest on a commercial mortgage, okay, the internet, and your business telephone. Now, unlike the PPP, you don't have that requirement that 60% of the funds must be used for payroll. You don't have that restriction using the EIDL funds. All right, so you have 30 years. Can you imagine, not in my lifetime, on a commercial loan, have you ever been given 30 years to repay a loan and you have no fees for the loan? Okay, no fees. Now, collateral, $25,000 or less, no collateral is needed. If the loan amount is over $25,000, then we're going to take a blanket lien on the assets of your business. Now, applicants will not be declined because of a lack of collateral. Typically what I'm seeing, let me put my eyes on here so I can see better. All right, so typically you're getting a decline for unverifiable information, okay? So, and the second reason is because you weren't able to substantiate your economic injury. And so those are the two, and the third reason is because the FICO score for the owner is under 600, okay? So those are the primary reasons why you'll see a decline. Now, the way to overcome those declines is that you would provide the SBA with your 2018 and 2019 and your 5-month interim statements, which should actually show how you've been impacted, right, because of COVID-19. In terms of unsubstantiated information, well, of course, we talked about this earlier. We need the articles, bylaws, certificate of good standing. The other thing that's not really talked about is that when you give your bank routing number and the account number, the name of your business needs to match exactly how you've applied for the loan, okay? So it should say Acme Inc., okay? It shouldn't have your individual name. So a lot of times with people, what I've heard and what I've seen now is that if you're sole proprietor, people will have Barbara Jones, okay, using it as a business account when it's really Barbara Jones doing business as Barnaby Jones Incorporated, okay, or something to that effect. So let's just make sure that the title on your business account matches the name that you've put on the application so that you won't get declined. All right, personal guarantees are required. The first payment is not due for 12 months. Yes, interest is accruing, but the first payment is not due for 12 months. And I forgot to mention that with the PPP. You get a 12-month deferral on the PPP, all right? And then there is no prepayment penalty for paying this loan off early. So let's review, and let's look at this from the mindset of cash flow. So you have an existing SBA loan, so 7A 504 microloan. You can defer the payments on those loans. All right, you have a non-SBA loan with your bank. You can defer the payments up to 6 months on those loans. Now you have a PPP. Okay, well, you got a year not to make a payment on the PPP should a portion of your PPP loan not be forgiven. And now we're talking about EIDL. With EIDL, you have 12 months in which you don't have to make any payments for this loan. And so now, if you're concerned about, depending on the industry that you're in, of running out of money, now you've heard 4 or 5 mechanisms in which you can conserve your cash flow to help you with your operations. All right, next slide, please. All right, so here's this thing about the advance. Now, I remember when this part first rolled out. The media said that you would just get $10,000 automatically just by applying for EIDL. Well, it was wrong. Remember, the devil is always in the details. So it was $1,000 per employee up to, just like it says here, up to $10,000, okay? You have 10 employees, you get $10,000. You have 2 W-2 employees, you get $2,000. And that's for full-time equivalents or part-time equivalents. And you get this advance, as they're calling it, which is really a grant, and you don't have to do anything for it to become a grant, okay? And you get this money whether or not you actually get a loan, okay? Whether or not you get a loan for EIDL. Here's what's important. Borrowers do not have to repay the advance. As I said before, even if your application for the EIDL is advanced. All right, and of course you go to the SBA website, it's covid19relief.sba.gov if you want to apply. There is $60 billion left in EIDL, $60 billion. You heard me say there's $100 billion for PPP. So folks, between these 2 programs, there's $160 billion that you need to go ahead and apply for to help sustain your businesses. The interest rates are great. The terms and conditions are great. If you haven't applied, you need to apply. All right, next slide, please. All right, so PPP loan proceeds must be used to refinance EIDLs. Now, I will tell you for this first bullet, there is discrepancy. So I'll read it. An EIDL may not be refinanced with a PPP loan when the PPP borrower received the EIDL before January 31st, 2020, or after April 3rd, 2020. All right, please hear me closely on this. We didn't know anything about COVID-19 until around March. There weren't any loan programs in effect until March, okay? Now, I happen to have worked in the Office of Disaster Assistance before the position I have now. And remember, in the Office of Disaster Assistance, their sole job is to get money to individuals and businesses who have suffered a disaster like COVID-19, okay? So if we didn't have COVID-19 before January 31st, 2020, then they can't be talking about, right, the EIDL funds for COVID-19. So I just want you guys to put that in perspective. We didn't know anything about COVID-19 prior to January 31st, 2020. So this is actually talking about loans that you receive from the Office of Disaster Assistance, okay, for hurricanes and floods and fires, okay? So let's keep that in mind. And so even if it says after April 3rd, you still could have received money for those disasters after April 3rd. So I just wanted to make that clarification for you because the dates here are very important to keep in mind, okay? All right. So the second one, an EIDL is not required to be refinanced with a PPP loan, okay? It's not required, okay? Now, when the PPP borrower received funds from an EIDL from January 31st through April 3rd, 2020, the PPP borrower used the EIDL loans for purposes other than payroll costs. Remember the dates that I talked about in the first one, okay? Because PPP didn't really come out until March 22nd, and we didn't get an interim ruling until April 2nd. So just keep that in mind. But I have to put it up here because if you guys see it out there on social media and you don't have context around it, you're gonna get nervous. So I want to I'm giving you context around this, okay? A PPP loan must be used to refinance the full amount of the EIDL when the PPP borrower received funds from the EIDL loan from January through April. All right, so this is what I'll cover for you for that. The dates are important. First of all, when the EIDL program rolled out, no one was getting EIDL loans in March, and in a lot of instances, even in early April, okay? So let's keep that in mind. So this really doesn't apply. But what I'm gonna go through is a scenario of how to properly use both programs. So let's say you applied for EIDL first, which a lot of companies did. They applied for EIDL. They got the money, okay? A lot of people used it for what I call their operating expenses. The internet, their business phone, their lease payments, okay? And accounts payable. That's really what a lot of businesses use the money for. Some people used it for payroll, but for the expenses I just mentioned is what a lot of people, from speaking with a lot of you on the phone, okay, on a daily basis, that's how you use the money. Now you applied for PPP, and you applied for PPP under the old rules, where 75% was to be used for payroll and 25% for what I'll call utilities. Now, if you received enough money under the PPP, you could actually use a portion of those funds, pay off those expenses, because those same expenses apply under PPP, right? They do, because 25% of it could be used for PPP. So you've paid off the EIDL for those expenses. You've used 75% of the money for payroll. Now it's 60%, but you use 75% of that money for payroll. Now you have one loan that's totally forgivable. And that's how the two programs work together, okay? Now, Matt, did you have anything you want to add to that, or can I keep going?
No, keep going. I mean, I'm okay. I'm with you. I'm glad you clarified this though, because I was a little confused myself.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So we'll go to the next slide. All right. So here's another thing, and here's how this works together. So we have the SBA Express Bridge Loan. This didn't get talked about much under the CARES Act. What do we always hear about? The PPP. Okay. And after a while, the PPP, was talked about more than the EIDL, when the EIDL was up. We didn't hear anything about the Debt Relief Act that I went over, right? That allows you to get deferments for up to 6 months on non-SBA and SBA loans. And oh, by the way, this just came to mind. If you're getting a new 7A, 504, or microloan for expansion, you go to your bank, you apply. On your behalf, the SBA will make the first 6 months of interest, principal, and fees on that brand new loan for you, okay? They'll make the payments on your behalf to your bank. So that's also covered under the Debt Relief Act that we really haven't heard much about, okay? So I wanted to bring that up because it just came to my memory. All right, so back to the SBA Express. Next slide, please. So suppose you were impatient with EIDL. You applied to EIDL. It's taken, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. 7 weeks. Okay. You said, I need money. I need a quick 25 grand. All right. So you go to the bank and basically you're just filling out the company name, telephone number, and EIN. Okay. And giving the QuickBooks 12/31/19 financials if you haven't done if you hadn't at that time done your business tax return. All right, so you can get an SBA Express bridge loan. You've got the money in your hands, but when you get the EIDL money, you're going to use the EIDL money, and let's just say you got $150,000. So you're going to use 25,000 of that 150 to pay off this SBA Express loan. Now, you have to go to a participating bank, and you can go to SBA.gov to find out which banks locally are participating in the SBA Express program, okay? But this is another way, if you need to get some quick money into your business, is to use the SBA Express program. All right, next slide, please. All right, so for loan application support, please take these numbers down. Even though this whole slide presentation will be available, you can call for EIDL, the customer service number. They say it's open every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I would say call first thing in the morning or toward the end of the evening, because that's when you're going to actually get someone on the telephone to speak with. And then, of course, you can always email disaster customer service at SBA.gov if you have questions, or if you need to submit additional information to the folks there who are in Fort Worth, Texas, who are actually processing these applications. Now, let me say this. I have no influence over the people down there in Fort Worth, Texas. I receive a lot of emails with your EIDL reference numbers, wanting to know what the status is. And I have no pull down there in Fort Worth, Texas, to get a status on your application. All I can ask you to do is to be patient. They will email you when they've given you approval. Sometimes even with the advance, if you're checking your business account every day, sometimes you'll just see the advance in your checking account, okay, that they've given you. And then they'll send you an email saying, okay, we've approved you for $100,000. Do you want the money? And then you have a certain amount of time to respond. So go ahead and take the money. All right, next slide, please. All right, so you have plenty of help to apply for the SBA Express, the PPP, and the EIDL. You have Matt, right? And his other colleagues at SCORE. You have your small business development centers, University of Maryland, Howard University, the George Mason University Network out there in Northern Virginia. You have the women's business centers. And I guess I'm supposed to say that you don't have to be a woman to take advantage of the women business centers for help, okay? But they're the women business centers. And then you have the VBOCs, or the Veteran Business Outreach Centers, that can also assist you. You don't have to be a veteran, but you can also get assistance from these organizations. Now, let me be clear. These are free. I am disappointed to hear that there have been a lot of businesses throughout the DMV that have paid as much as $8,500 to get assistance with applying for these programs. So please, please do not do that. You see that we have plenty of assistance here for you to be able to apply for these programs, okay? So hopefully I will not be receiving any more emails where people are telling me that they're paying people a lot of money to apply for these loan programs. Now, as I mentioned earlier, June 30th, PPP is closing. There's another loan program that has gotten off to a slow start that has not received a lot of publicity, and that is the Federal Reserve's Main Street Loan Program, okay? It is a Federal Reserve program. It has already been funded to the tune of $600 billion. You having an EIDL or PPP loan does not preclude you from applying for that program. As the marketing says, it's also for single member LLCs, sole proprietorships, and 1099 miscellaneous people. All right. The minimum loan amount is $250,000. You can have up to 15,000 employees. The loan amount goes up to $150 million. The interest rate is anywhere from 2.5% to 4%, depending on the risk of your business. You will have to submit a full financial package, just like you would if you were going to apply at a regular bank, okay? And yeah, you will have to provide personal guarantees. Now the thing, and you have a 4-year repayment. And the thing about this is, it's just another financing tool that you can use to, you know, sustain and grow your business, okay? Because again, the PPP program is shutting down as of June 30. So far, the participating banks in the Main Street Bank Lending Program is Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. There are others. I just don't know about them yet, but those 3 that I just named, I know are participating in the program. All right, next slide, please.
The Main Street program, by the way, it's usually, there are some requirements that you have to have earnings of a certain level. So if you're you may be too small. So you make sure you check out the EBITDA requirements for sizing, because you may not qualify.
Yes, and so thank you, Matt, for that. Thank you. And so that is all I have. And so one of the things that I know people are concerned about is the forgiveness portion of the PPP. And what I'll do is I'll let Matt talk about that, but I'll tee it up by saying, just remember now, under the Flexibility Act, 60% of it needs to be used for payroll. The other 40% needs to be used for what I call operating expenses. There is now a forgiveness EZ form that I think are primarily used by sole proprietors, single member LLCs, and what am I forgetting? 1099s. And then there's the long form, okay, that is to be used. So I'll let Matt take it away from there.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly give you some advice that I've been giving my clients. Is one, I don't think there's much advantage for people to stay within an 8-week period. I would recommend you elect a 24-week period to give yourself sufficient runway so that you can kind of nail this down as best as you can. If you file what's called an IRS Schedule C in your federal tax return, that means you have no payroll. There is no payroll. Then you automatically qualify for 100% loan forgiveness by filling out the EZ application form. And the formula for figuring out forgiveness is the same as the formula for figuring out the loan amount. So for all you self-employed people, that's a sole proprietorship, 1099s, that's a single member LLC. Those people get, I repeat, you get 100% loan forgiveness. Go beyond the 8 weeks, elect 24 weeks, use the easy form, you're home free, and it can be all payroll. Does not have to be non-payroll cost, because some people work from their home and they do not get to put home office deduction as an expense. So that's one of the advices that a lot of CPAs are giving some other people who are basically the self-employed. Self-employed means you don't have a paycheck. Okay, then I have other people who have a paycheck, or they have people with payroll. Even if you have payroll, and you can say that we maintain the payroll, even if the people didn't show up for work and they were still on payroll, and you didn't reduce their hours and their pay by a certain percentage, you can still use the easy form, okay? If you can't qualify for the easy form, then there's a longer form, and it's going to take a little bit more calculations, because then you have to calculate what's called full-time equivalents, and you got to look at your payroll periods and that kind of stuff. I would recommend, to get through this exercise, I find that the Treasury Department tends to post things very quickly on a single page, and I tend to look at that page a lot. And if you get on the Google search engine, and you put in the words Treasury PPP guidance, that page will come up at the top. It has all of these application forms on it. It has all of the guidance, has all of the FAQ pages. The guidance come, and they change the guidance almost every other week. There's a new guidance coming out.
Yes.
I mean, I think they're like, what, how many guidance documents have come out? 13 or what?
Yes, yeah.
A lot.
So, Matt,
Yeah.
when can people apply for the forgiveness? Like if they've gotten the PPP and they were in the first round and they are now, they're trying to extend out the forgiveness, or they've used all the money already. Can they file now? Can you go?
I would not wait. I would wait. What I would do is once you spend all the money and you've spent all the money, then get all your documentation together. Now, if you have payroll, you need to allow some time to, for example, when you do payroll, the problem is you have things like 940, 941 quarterly tax report, and they usually lag for another. You need to allow some time to capture all this other documentation. So once I've spent the money, give yourself some time to get all the documentation together, like 940, 941s, because that's lags behind, so on a quarterly basis. Then once I got all the documentation together, then I would apply for forgiveness. I would not wait all the way 24 months, because you're taking yourself into the next flu season, which I don't like. There's a risk there. So I would go after forgiveness once I spend the money, I get all my documentation, apply for forgiveness. And the Treasury Department website and there's a CPA that is really good, and he has YouTube videos. So he literally shows you how to fill out the form and every little stupid thing. So, because I think people are starting to get a little bit zoomed and webinared out at this point. So sometimes the short, stupid videos on YouTube are really useful. And if you, again, go to Google and just put in the words JJ CPA YouTube. JJ CPA YouTube, and he's got videos for every little stupid thing you can think of. And if you go to the Treasury Department site, you got all the guidance and documents, and that YouTube channel is going to get you home. Those two resources will get you through this process. So with that, I'll kind of, because I know you want to take some Q&As probably at this point.
We've got
Rod, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, I wanted to jump in and give some numbers, because, I love the numbers, okay? And so for PPP, as of June 6th, the state of Maryland had 74,612 applications for $9.8 billion, okay? So I just wanted to give you that statistic. And then who were the top lenders for PPP? And as you can imagine, it would be Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo. Bank of America processed 325,853 applications for $24.9 billion. JP Morgan processed 256,978 applications for $28.6 billion. And then Wells Fargo processed 171,448 applications for $10.1 billion. So, so as expected, the big banks processed a lot of applications, but you had 5,458 lenders actually participate in the program, and 4,531,000 applications were processed, okay? So I think that the banks and the SBA combined did a very good job, because basically what you're asking to happen is $660 billion to be put on the street in a short period of time. And what are we in, week 7 or week 8 of this thing? And so if you think about it, that's a whole lot of money to be pumping through the system and getting that money out into the hands of business owners across the United States. Yeah. So with that, I'll close.
That's interesting.
So we have a number of questions, and we should go through a number of these. Basically, one of the questions is, how is the EIDL amount of loan determined?
There were 3 iterations of this thing, okay? When it first started, it was if you had gross profits, and then I guess to my surprise, business owners didn't know what gross profits were. So sales minus your cost of goods sold equal gross profits. All right, so they took the gross profits, divided it by 12, took that number and multiplied it by 6. To what they were saying is, we're giving you 6 months of working capital. Then as the program went on, then they took the same formula and then multiplied it by 4 to give you 4 months of working capital. Then as the program continued on, they took the same formula, right? Gross profits divided by 12 times 2 to give you 2 months of working capital. And then they just decided that, you know what, $150,000 was going to be the maximum. So that's the latest that I can actually give you. That's what I know right here, right now, today.
Thank you. If we received a PPP loan before the 24-week existing, do we have to request of the bank to be considered for the 24-week period rather than the 8-week? I am not certain how we submit this to the bank and the SBA so that they know we have elected the 24-week payment cycle.
I think after, Matt, correct me, I think after June 5th, you're automatically getting that 24 weeks. If I remember correctly, is after June 5th.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the date that the Flexibility Act was enacted. So if it's June 4th or sooner, they're going to assume it's 8 weeks. And they're also going to assume if you have a loan that's a PPP loan, it's 2 years and not 5 years.
That's right, yeah.
So just mention there's 2 little catch-alls there.
Is there a deadline to apply, respond for the EIDL loan?
There is no deadline. I think that's going to be one of those when they just run out of money, that's going to be the end of it until I guess Congress can come together to put forth a round 3 for both PPP and EIDL. But right now there's $60 billion left in EIDL.
I just received the PPP loan and just got approved for the EIDL. One of the terms of the EIDL loan upon signing is that you must disclose to SBA any grant or payments from any government entity for emergency funding. Does this mean that I need to now inform SBA that I received the PPP loan, and how does that impact the funding from EIDL or PPP loans?
No, you're just letting them know, right? Just like it says, you need to disclose that you've received EIDL funds. Now, did they get the EIDL funds just now and they had the PPP first? I think that's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm making a distinction is because if they got the EIDL money first and then the PPP, and then the PPP, then they could have used a portion of the PPP to pay the EIDL. But that doesn't sound like that's what's happened. So really all they need to do is just disclose.
What is meant by transportation under utilities for PPP loan forgiveness? Can a disability insurance be included? For loan?
I haven't seen under any of that disability transportation is included. No.
It's health insurance, not disability insurance. And transportation is fuel used for business use. And
Right, yes.
that's basically, it's just gas in the business car, or maybe someone's out on a trip for business use, and maybe, you know, but the thing is, I wouldn't nickel and dime the bank over this. You got 24 weeks, okay, to do it, to do payroll right, to get the rent right. You know, you don't have to nickel and dime the process too much. So don't sweat it too much.
For those amounts that are forgiven, will companies have to claim those funds as income, revenue, and incur a federal tax liability?
No.
No.
No, the money is not taxable, but you can't deduct the expenses either. So on your books, when you go through loan forgiveness, I would recommend you do a reclassification entry. That means basically when you got the PPP loan, the cash went into your bank, right? And then you started spending the money. And as you spend the money, you hit expense accounts, right? And your expense, rent, utilities, payroll, blah, blah, blah. And then later on, oh, we forgive it. So now you got to reclassify the expenses, get them, you literally credit the expense and you debit the loan payable account to get it down to, because the loan payable account, so let's say it's a $50,000 loan. Now I got to get it down to whatever it is, and maybe it's zero if I got 100% loan forgiveness. But don't, you have to reclassify the business expenses because the expenses are not deductible. The government is literally paying for everything. It just like poof, it goes away.
Can you all discuss a little farther the new 60-40 split for the PPP loan forgiveness?
Well, I think we gave what the 60-40 comprises of, right?
Yeah.
60% for payroll and 40% for what? Lease, rent payments, interest on a commercial mortgage, transportation, which I call fuel cost,
Yeah.
right? Business phone, internet, gas, water, and electric.
PPP payroll, can you include sick or vacation leave as part of the payroll?
Yes.
Yes.
For those of us who will choose the 8-week methodology, what would the limit date to apply for forgiveness be?
I think it's 10 months after the period ends. You have
After the
10 months, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
To
Yes.
ask for forgiveness. And then after that, you got to start paying back a loan. A PPP loan will kick in automatically.
Now let's be clear. It should not take you as a business owner 10 months. Okay, it just shouldn't.
Yeah.
Many banks listed on the SBA website are no longer accepting PPP applications, even though we have until June 30th. Who else is still accepting applications?
I would go to Cabbage. I would go to Cabbage, On Deck, other two that I really like, and then to a lesser degree, PayPal, Intuit.
Can you tell us a little bit about the CDFI program as well?
All right, so $10 billion was set aside for CDFIs. In this area, the big two CDFIs are the Washington Area Community Investment Fund, right? They're located on Rhode Island Avenue in Northeast. And then you have the Latino Economic Development Corp. And now you don't have to be a Latina or Latino to take advantage of their services. They're located in the Columbia Heights area of Washington, D.C. And so they have money specifically to give to companies that are located in underserved areas.
May I receive the website for the Federal Reserve Main Street program? Can you go ahead and give that, Rod, just for everybody's sake?
You know what? Actually, I don't know their website URL by heart, but I mean, you can just Google it and go onto the site. Or you can just actually Google the Federal Reserve Main Street Bank program, and you know, everything will pull up.
If you were denied for EIDL and PPP during round 1, can you reapply? I now have financial statements to assist with my application.
All right, so if you know the reason for the declination and now you have the documentation to actually, you know, cure it, then sure, reapply. But for PPP, hurry up.
Yeah, like today may be the last day.
Yeah.
Because they got to get, yeah.
Go ahead, Matt, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm saying the SBA has to approve by June 30th, right? So that means the bank has to get your application and make sure it's right. And if you don't, if your application's wrong, so you don't have much time at all.
Can an independent contractor with no extra employees apply for a PPP loan?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Just reminder everybody, even though you did the presentation, sometimes it takes a couple times to hear things and for everything to register. I just received the PPP loan and got approved for the EIDL.
EIDL. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Good.
Great.
So I received information from the PPP that they have taken money out to repay EIDL. Can you explain this?
Yes, because they have to deduct the amount that you receive from EIDL from the PPP, right? And that's why they ask you to disclose. Somewhere on those forms, they ask you to disclose. So they'll take money from PPP to pay the EIDL, so those funds, so now you just have hopefully your PPP. And then all of it, if used correctly, will be forgiven.
If seeking forgiveness safe harbor, don't you need FTE count on 12/31/2020 before applying for forgiveness?
There's a number of safe harbors that they're not date specific. Like if you fire someone for just cause and you can document that, or you tried to hire somebody back and you couldn't find a qualified person, okay, there's a number of safe harbors that are not date specific, that you will not be penalized for not meeting the FTE full-time equivalent count.
And let's be clear, the documentation for the forgiveness is the key. The documentation, okay?
And that's a question. For a sole proprietor, do you have to document payroll costs, for example, writing yourself weekly checks, or is the amount automatically forgiven as long as you fill out the easy form?
Just write out a check to yourself from your business checking account, write the words owner withdrawal on the check, and put it in your personal checking account. That's about it.
Yeah.
Please have a look through the chat, everybody, and see what other questions may have come up. I'm a member of the credit union and they are not involved with the PPP program for funding. Are there any grants availability?
Yeah, what I do is I just, whatever jurisdiction you live in, then you just need to, find out what those are, grant and other loan opportunities, right? Because this is what I'm saying to business owners. So you have the PPP, you have the EIDL, now you have Main Street. So you have federal lending programs to help sustain your business. Now you need to look at your state and local, right, or state and municipalities for other lending programs and grant opportunities. And then you cobble all that together, right, all those funds together to help sustain your business and hopefully will get you through COVID-19. But one of the things you also need to be thinking about is, as we're going through COVID-19, you need to be thinking about, okay, sustainability. So now, how am I going to survive post COVID-19? And so so you need to start thinking about that right now.
I know you've answered. Oh, go ahead, Ebony, sorry.
No, I have another question. So someone has asked if they've already received an EIDL loan, can they request an increase or can they get a second loan?
Nope, that's it.
That's it, one time only?
Yeah, you're done.
Okay. And then also clarification on the $1,000 advance. You mentioned that it was free. If you do not free, you do not have to repay it if you are not approved for the EIDL loan. Can you clarify? Okay.
There's nothing to clarify. That's
okay.
it.
I think people may not have heard you correctly, or if it was too good to be true.
Yeah, once you get that advance, and remember I said earlier, there's nothing that you have to do, right, in order for it to be considered, quote, a grant. You don't have to pay it back. You just get it because you applied, whether or not you get approved for EIDL or not. And I liked the EIDL program, and this is an editorial, a Rod editorial. I liked the EIDL program for the 1099s, the single member LLCs, and the sole proprietors, because you got that, that advance/grant upfront, whether or not you got approved for a loan. So why wouldn't you, in my opinion, apply for that on top of the PPP, which later on down the road with the correct documentation would also be forgiven. So hopefully that answered the question. You probably got a little more than you wanted, but hopefully that answered the question.
And can you sort of elaborate on these dates? I see a lot of questions in the chats about the dates. And people are still sort of unsure about the 8-week period and the 24-week period.
Well, the 8-week period ends when the funds are transferred to your bank account. That's when the 8-week period starts. So
Okay.
add 8 weeks to that date. That's it. That's the dead drop date. Bingo. And then 24 weeks, it's the earlier of 24 weeks or December 31st, 2020. So you got a lot of runway. So it's either 8 weeks or a lot of runway in front of you.
Okay.
So we've,
Go ahead, Alicia.
sorry, so we've covered 2 programs. Can you just remind everybody again? Someone is asking, I filled out my PPP borrow application. Do I apply then to a lender through the PPP program? Just again, remind everybody how they're doing the different programs, how they apply, Rod, if you could.
The PPP is through a bank or fintech. The EIDL is actually on the SBA website through the EIDL portal.
SBA.gov/disaster. SBA.gov/disaster.
To everyone, this was very informative. Thank you.
Now, I just want to reiterate, you know, with there being $160 billion that's left, if you haven't applied, please go apply and sustain your business. Okay?
Yeah.
That's, I'm exhorting you to go do that. There's
Yeah.
no reason why you should not be applying for these programs to sustain your business.
Especially if you're self-employed. Think about it, 100% loan forgiveness on a short form for a PPP loan. Self-employed, it's 1099, every 1099 get worker. Why you wouldn't want to do that, I don't know. But
Someone is still confused, and I'm sure that they're not the only one. I got the PPP on June 1st. Am I stuck with the 8-week only period?
no, you can make an election to go 24 weeks. Even if you
How-
got,
How do you do that, Matt? How do
well,
you,
you can talk to let the bank know if you want. If you want to make sure, you can notify the bank of your intent. You got to work with your bank. The banker is the one to work with on your PPP loan. And the SBA is the people you need to work with on your EIDL loan.
So I know we have a lot of unanswered questions. We will try our best. What we can do, EDC, it will send out the chat box and the additional questions to Rod and Matt, and maybe have you guys answer. And we will continue to answer the questions that have been submitted because there are quite a few. But hopefully everyone has learned something today and got some of your questions answered. If you were unsure about the PPP and EIDL program, as well as the other programs that Rod mentioned with the loan forgiveness, the bridge loan, the other SBA loan programs that are offered. There was quite a lot of information given today and a lot of topics covered. Again, we will be emailing and providing the PowerPoint slides to all of the participants today, as well as we have been recording this video, and it will be posted on EDC's website as well as our YouTube channel. But I want to thank Roderick and Matt for being here today, sort of enlightening us on this process. It's a lot of information and we can't get enough help. I think with walking through this process, because it is complicated and it can be confusing as well. I want to thank Alicia for joining us and helping to moderate this, as well as Lori Valentine and Jordan Tillman, who are behind the scenes in EDC's marketing department to help put on this webinar. So that is all we have for you today. Thank you all for attending. Again, we will post this on our website. I can't say that enough, as well as email you this PowerPoint presentation. I know a number of people have submitted their email address in the chat box. If you want to continue to do so, please do so, but we will have this information posted on the website. So thank you again, Roderick. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Alicia, for helping us to put on this presentation today.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you all. Thank you. All right, everyone, be safe and have a great day.
Thank you.